Dr. Schmidt. For our final segment of this morning's program, we have a thought-provoking and engaging panel discussion entitled The Power of Consumers to Push the Industry to Adopt Sustainable Palm Oil. How important is this segment compared to industry players and governments? Our panelists for this discussion, as I call your names, I'd like to invite you on stage. Ms. Agnes Pondovan, who is the Quality and Sustainable Development Manager for Carrefour Group Asia. Mr. Daniel May, who is the Project Director for the German Forum Sustainable Palm Oil, or GIZ. Jackie O'Brien, who is the General Manager of Communications for Zoos Victoria, Australia. And last but not least, Ms. Michelle Desilets, who is the Executive Director of Orangutan Land Trust. I now will hand over this session to Richard Whitehead from Food Navigator Asia. Now, Richard will be the moderator of this session.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this discussion. So consumers vote with their feet, right? Is that the case? Can you hear me? That's better. Thank you. Consumers vote with their feet. The beauty of having a massive range of options available at supermarkets and dairies is you can say no to a product if you don't like the taste, the packaging, the company that makes it, or the ingredients it contains. Consumers are more informed now than they've ever been before. They're given greater regulatory protection than before. The headlines are more accessible today than they've ever been through the rise of internet reporting. And with that comes what I call stories within a headline. We've all heard certified destruction, for example. That's a notable one, levelled by an environmental pressure group. Just in a couple of words, you don't need to read much further along. But research has shown that consumers are concerned by palm oil's controversies, whatever your take is of them. However, they've also found that the effect of these controversies on willingness to purchase products containing palm oil is small, but it's still important. At Food Navigator Asia, we've taken a long-term interest in the palm oil debate. And one question I've often asked the industry is what effect consumer sentiment has on the purchase of products containing palm oil, and what the impact of certified sustainable sourcing has on people who buy the goods. Yet in spite of the questions, I'm still none the wiser. Everyone has their opinions, but no one seems to know for sure, or at least they're not telling me. Things move fast in the world of fast-moving consumer goods, meaning it's foolish to focus on the present. Consumer trends are changing quickly, and it's important for the industry to understand sentiment and act on it. Now, joining me today on this panel, looking at the power of consumers to push the industry to adopt sustainable palm oil and how important this segment is compared to industry players and governments, we have Daniel May, who is the Secretary General of the German Forum Sustainable Palm Oil. He supports the goal of 100% segregated CSPO and SPKO in Germany. To my right, we've got Agnes Pondovan, who is a project leader for sustainable palm oil at the Carrefour Group. We have Jackie O'Brien next to Daniel. She spent the last 4 years leading the marketing and communications efforts of the Zoos Victoria's Don't Palm Us Off campaign to secure a market for sustainable palm oil in Australia. And at the far end, we've got Michelle Desilets. She's the Executive Director of the Orangutan Land Trust. She believes that the oil palm is here to stay, so sustainable production is essential to protect orangutans and other endangered species. Now, my first question is to the panel. Do consumers have real knowledge behind the headlines on which to base their views? and their purchasing. What do you think, Michelle?
Excuse me, as you said, I think consumer awareness is rising, but with such a complex issue, it's a very tall order to expect them to understand the complexities, and they still want a simple solution. I think we cannot expect the consumer to understand fully the supply chain behind each and every product that they're buying. They tend to put their trust in the brands to do their homework and to ensure that they know where the palm oil and other ingredients come from, and that palm oil is not responsible for the death of orangutans, for example. So while consumer awareness is raising, it's still at a stage where those headlines are grabbing. And they're grabbing because it's still happening. Okay, it's undeniable that conventional, unsustainable palm oil is still having huge impacts on the environment, on forest, on people, and on biodiversity. And many, in just the past few weeks, many huge headlines surrounding the orangutans. So the challenge here remains for us to help the consumer differentiate between conventional palm oil and sustainable palm oil. And the challenge is to make sure that they can trust that sustainable palm oil is what it says it is.
Now, Jackie, you've been working on this issue in Australia, working with the government to help promote sustainable palm oil and to bring consumers to accept sustainable palm oil. What's customer awareness like over in Australia about that?
It's growing. We at Zoos Victoria, we have pushed it along by actually helping consumers understand what manufacturers in Australia, or which manufacturers use palm oil. Palm oil's not labelled in products in Australia, so the consumer really doesn't have a lot of information. And so when you are trying to drive a market for certified sustainable palm oil, it's really difficult if you don't know what products to demand it in. So at the zoo, we actually built what's called a supermarket. Everything at the zoo is super. So we built a supermarket which features 18 manufacturers, and visitors come in. We see about 2 million visitors each year. They come in, they scan a product, and it shows them on a screen what commitments that manufacturer has made to certified sustainable palm oil. And it ranks them in red, which is no commitment, orange, which is some commitment but need to do better, and green, which is you're committed, you're using it and you're labelling it. Visitors can then send an email directly to the manufacturer either saying, not good enough, we want you to source certified sustainable palm oil, or if it's green, saying congratulations, thank you, I will be using your product. So we decided to actually do the hard work for the consumer because there was nothing really that the consumer could do. So it's early stages, but since we launched in August, 15,000 emails have been sent from the supermarket, and we've moved all of our red companies, manufacturers, to orange. So it's actually working. When you compare manufacturers against each other, they don't like it, and they don't want to be seen as the ones that are doing the wrong thing.
Now, Daniel, you're with the German Forum Sustainable Palm Oil, and your members have committed to 100% sustainable palm oil by the end of next year. Will that have any impact on consumers?
Well, all the members we have committed for 100% sustainable palm oil and palm kernel oil until end of next year. That's right. Yeah, yes, I think it will. I think it will have an impact on the consumers, but more in an indirect way. By the way that those companies we are working with and those members we are having are pushing all the others forward, which are not acting that fast and which are not maybe acting a bit slower, and especially are pushing those forward which are not yet doing anything, because I have to commit that also in Germany and also other countries in Europe, there's still obviously a big number of companies sourcing conventional palm oil, sourcing non-sustainable and non-certified palm oil. And we hope that with the group we founded and moving quickly forward, that we are pushing all those others forward which are not yet doing anything, and therefore we will have an impact on the consumers.
And Michelle, working for Carrefour, sorry, and yes, apologies. Your company has no doubt the closest contact with the consumers themselves. I mean, what sort of trends are you seeing with consumer adoption of certified palm oil, or a trend towards a preference for certified palm oil?
In fact, what I will say that you have different objectives for all the country. In fact, you can have some country in Asia, Malaysia, Indonesia, they will be more sensitive about the livelihood of the smallholder. This is one part of the sustainability that they will like. And in Europe, they will be more on deforestation, on the protection of the orangutan. So in fact, you really need to have the good dialogue with the consumer to make sure that you are giving them the correct message. After, what I will say that in Carrefour, we try to inform as much as we can our consumer. We use on the ingredient list palm oil, even before the European regulation that before we can use only vegetable oil. We use a trademark for segregated oil. We have done some communication on our website, on catalog, on activities in store, also when we have the cooking oil with the trademark in Indonesia. So we do our best to communicate on RSPO on the trademark, but one point that I will join Michel is that when we do a strong communication to promote RSPO, you have to be really sure about RSPO, and at the end, it's the consumer who will have the final word. So if the consumer have any doubt on the certification, they will just walk away your product, and it will be not so good for the CSPO market.
But following on from that, do consumers really understand, are they aware in sufficient numbers of certified sustainable palm oil by seeing it on a badge, on a label? Do you have other efforts at Carrefour to educate consumers on the different types of palm oil available to them in the products they buy?
In fact, for the trademark issue, we only use it for the segregated palm oil because we think that the consumer can only understand when there is a physical sustainable palm oil in the product. When it's green palm or mass balance, we only use the sentence promoting sustainable palm oil. For the consumer, it's not so easy to understand mass balance and green palm because for them they really want to, I will not say that they want to eat palm oil, but they want to really get a product with sustainable palm oil inside, and they really want to do the sustainable action when they buy sustainable products.
Now, moving on to Michelle, I said earlier that, I got that right, I said earlier that that the headlines are really ruling the debate. I did a quick Google search to look for positive headlines on palm oil, and what I found was a bunch of really plain, uninspiring, research-driven studies. And I had a look at for the standard palm oil headline, and jingoistic, screaming out almost the anti-values of palm oil right from the start. It's a very polarized debate. Now, Michelle, you said before that a simplistic response to the ills of the palm industry will not do. It's a very complex issue, and it needs to be treated as such through dialogue. Can the debate that we have at the moment, by its very nature, be able to move along less simplistic lines?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the final question?
Yeah. Can the debate, by its very nature, be able to move along less simplistic lines and actually address the real issues?
I think it already is. I think even if you look at, read beyond the headlines, yes, they use eye-catching, distressful headlines to grab your attention, but read beyond it, and the substance between, under some of these headlines is looking at the complexity and is looking at what, for example, CSPO is achieving, how far it's come, but perhaps calling attention to some of its shortcomings, whether it's a matter of a rogue member who's failing to uphold the standard and thereby jeopardizing the consumer's trust in CSPO products and the RSPO at large for their perhaps slow reaction or less than robust reaction to some of these rogue members in their perception, whether that's right or wrong. The good news stories don't sell. You know, that's a difficulty. We do try to promote those good news stories. We do that a lot through social networking, perhaps not so much through the headlines themselves, but social networking provides a great platform for discussing the progress of sustainable palm oil or specific companies. So where am I going with this? I think it's still a conundrum that you've got a very, very difficult subject with many nuances and short attention spans for consumers, for readers of newspapers, and how to convey this complex message. I'm sorry, but I don't know all of the answers. But just to be accurate, realistic, to accept the reality and move from there as a starting point to what the potential for sustainable palm oil is, what sustainable palm oil can do for biodiversity, for ecosystems, and again, to really build that differentiation between conventional and sustainable palm oil. And thereby building trust in the brand of CSPO, in the brand of, and the brands themselves that bear the logo of CSPO, because again, the consumer believes that the company should be responsible for this. They don't have the time to do all the research. And until CSPO becomes a norm, or a product on the shelf is 100% physical CSPO, it's essentially not sufficient for the consumer. They have cynicism and distrust in the other supply chains if they know about them. And again, as Agnes said, they want to know that the palm oil that's in the product that they're actually putting in their body or washing their hair with has not cost the life of an orangutan. And that's the final story of it. We have the power in this room to provide those products to the consumer and build that trust.
Jackie, what's the, following on for this, what's the perception of palm oil versus sustainable palm oil in Australia? Is the debate mostly on orangutan grounds? You know, the live wire debate of clearing forest to make way for oil palm, or is there a more rational social side to it among consumers? What's the level of awareness and opinion down there?
I think consumers, like Michelle said, they're time poor, so they often don't have the ability to really, I guess, engage in the debate. So they expect if you're putting a certification mark on a product, you've done all that thinking for them. That if you're saying it's sustainable palm oil, it's palm oil that hasn't jeopardised the lives of people, orangutans, Sumatran tigers, a whole range of, and biodiversity as well. Which is why it's very, very important that that trademark is protected and that the principles and criteria behind certified sustainable palm oil are not only upheld but improved constantly. I think that from a zoo perspective and globally, about 100 zoos have all joined together under the World Association of Zoos and Aquaria about 2 weeks ago to pass a resolution to support certified sustainable palm oil, but also to engage in this debate with our visitors. Globally, we would see about 700 million visitors a year. Most of us hold either Sumatran tigers, we would hold orangutans, a range of species that would be impacted by palm oil. So we feel we have an opportunity to actually start engaging in this quite complex debate about certified sustainable palm oil, about moving beyond palm oil bad or palm oil good, about actually engaging in the debate around biodiversity and about the need for certified sustainable palm oil. It's a long way off, but I think the fact that zoos are coming on board to say, yeah, it's not simplistic, we do need to actually delve deeper into this is a good sign. But it's early days for CSPO as well, and you need to make sure that CSPO and the RSPO is doing what they are saying they are doing, and that's making it a sustainable industry.
Could I add briefly?
Please, yeah.
If I could just add briefly to that. It just so happens that RSPO and the RT11 falls during Orangutan Carrying Week. This is Orangutan Carrying Week. I'm sure we care about orangutans every day of the year. But this, and especially it's a concept embraced by the zoo community, is an opportunity to pull the consumers by the millions. I think we had 750 million visitors to the Waza zoos who have just issued a statement, a position paper, and a position paper that's very well balanced and which was developed in coordination with the ENGOs of the RSPO. And to further that, actually, Orangutan Land Trust, in cooperation with Zoos Victoria and the RSPO, are developing a sustainable palm oil toolkit for zoos to use to, again, to ensure that a consistent and fair and up-to-date and balanced messaging is available. Perhaps the zoo visitor only has a brief glimpse at something on the wall as they run from the elephant to the gorillas and on to the orangutans. But they can go back to the websites like Zoo Victoria's website or Cheyenne Mountain Zoo's website and find out more about the issues, go beyond the surface, maybe consider livelihoods. They've come in concerned about the orangutan. Now they find out other species, humans, food security. There's many issues entwined with this issue.
Daniel, your organisation ties together industry, retailers and other stakeholders in palm oil in Germany. Whose responsibility is it to broadcast the message advocating sustainable palm oil in the face of the widespread criticism seen online in headlines, etc.?
And I think in the very end, it's all our responsibility. It's the responsibility of the consumers whenever they are finding the label there or the trademark, especially buying this one. It's the responsibility of the retailers bringing those products into their markets. It's the responsibility of the consumer goods manufacturers to get sustainable palm oil into their products and into their supply chain. So I don't want all these kind of blame games, saying, oh, it's this one or that one or this stakeholder, or they are not doing enough. Therefore, I think it's just the responsibility of all of us. However, what I'm expecting in the end from my members in this German forum, and therefore mainly the retailers and the consumer goods manufacturers, is that they are pushing the things forward, because I wouldn't overestimate the responsibility and the knowledge of all the individual consumers and buyers. Because in Europe or Germany, we're having a lot of discussions, for instance, on textile or sustainable textiles from Bangladesh. We're having a lot of discussions on GMO. We are having a lot of discussions on sustainable fishing, sustainable fisheries. So there's a whole range of sustainability issues, not only in palm oil, but in the end in all our products we are consuming in Germany, that not every single consumer can know everything. And therefore I think it's on the industry and the retailers to push sustainable palm oil into the market and make this a norm, bring it into all products, and once it's physically available in all products, then we won't need to have those discussions we're having right now.
Agnes, are food manufacturers doing enough to promote the message of sustainable palm oil?
In fact, the thing that for the retailer part, we are working with a food manufacturer. We are responsible for our own brand product. And so when Carrefour set the commitment that we need to have all Carrefour products the palm oil inside all Carrefour products need to be sustainable in 2015, that means that we need to convince more than 200 manufacturers to follow us on the challenge to change to sustainable palm oil. And for a retailer, sometimes it's not easy because we are not the only client of the food manufacturer. So we really need to convince the manufacturer to change. If we focus on segregated, that we really need to change all this process to move forward segregated and to ensure that in the Carrefour product you can have sustainable palm oil. So it's not easy, but the commitment for Carrefour is 2015. We have good progress. Already 60% of the Carrefour product contains CSPO, so it's already a good step. And so I think that the good manufacturer is understand our problematic and is working well with us to achieve our commitment. And already 10% of the sustainable palm oil in the product is segregated. So we start in 2011, so it's getting better. So I think that the manufacturer is taking the way with us. So this is good.
And Jackie, having a clear, coordinated and understandable message put through the press to the consumer would help your work quite considerably. Is that?
I think so. It's something interesting happened at Easter time in Australia, which was a bit of a shame. One of the major food manufacturers who decided to just label palm oil in their products put out hot cross buns, and on the package it said contains palm oil. Now there was such a huge outrage that this manufacturer was using palm oil in their hot cross buns, and we were asked to comment on it, and it was a really difficult situation because we stood up for those guys. If those guys are going to actually label it in their product and then make a time-bound public commitment to using certified sustainable palm oil, they shouldn't actually be vilified for that. They should actually be congratulated because they're moving the industry forward. So I think being able to, and this is a role that everybody can play, being able to actually, in a level-headed way, take on some of these headlines, because some of the headlines can be misleading. They can skew the debate. So I think, it's difficult. It's very difficult to get beyond scenes of forest destruction and orangutans in distress, and, we've all seen the images. But I guess, again, it's up to all of us to actually engage in the debate, be really clear about CSPO, and I guess about CSPO, the supply chains being able to come into countries, particularly like Australia. Once we've got 100% CSPO into Australia, we're going to find it much, much easier. Now,
you mentioned the orangutan, the destruction of the forest, but Michelle, one thing that's rarely focused on is the indigenous workforce, which is a huge issue when it comes, huge positives of palm oil. Wouldn't it be good to see more of the jobs and the workers employed by the industry?
Yeah, I mean, there's some very strong NGOs that are trying to deliver the message, both negative and positive, about palm oil and livelihoods. And we try to embed that in our messaging as well. And when we're confronted with many with those headlines, it's a very emotional issue, and the people who support us obviously care very deeply about orangutans, and they're outraged when they see these headlines. And when we try to give them the balanced view, a very big part of our argument against boycotting, which is what they want to do, is the livelihood issue and the millions of people that are employed, and that under RSPO standards are paid a fair living wage and in a sustainable situation, that food security can go up rather than down. It can be positive for food security, giving them buying power. So we have an opportunity to put that issue into the discussion. And I find when we start to put that issue in, it's something where people say, oh, I hadn't actually considered it that way. And yes, it is rather colonialistic of me to think that I could deprive millions of people of jobs because I want to avoid palm oil in my products on principle, when the principle would be better that you support sustainable palm oil, which supports livelihoods.
And finally, just to Agnes, do consumers really have the power with an ingredient like palm oil, which is available in such a wide group of products, from cosmetics through to food, etc. Do they have the power to cut palm oil out of their purchasing?
No, I think it's impossible. And I think it's for this that we have some retailer who take the position to ban palm oil in the food product, but not in the non-food product, because today it's not possible. And for the food products, some of the retailers take the position with no palm oil. I don't think it's a solution, because the vision of RSPO is that sustainable palm oil is the norm. And if we want sustainable palm oil to be the norm, we need to push forward on sustainability. And if we say no palm oil, you are not going to help palm oil to become sustainable. So the solution that we have is that it's true that the consumer expectation is really high. So we can see that in Carrefour, as we put the palm oil on the ingredient list, we already have some consumer question about why are you using palm oil in your product and something like this, because the other one didn't write the name of the oil inside the product. So we already have some question, but in fact you just need to explain that you are using the trademark, or you are a member of RSPO, you tried your best to promote sustainable palm oil, and at the end you have the final answer. But it's true that when you want to promote sustainable palm oil, you are taking a risk of image, because we are all a part of the deal, retailer, grower, manufacturer, and all the responsibility is on us, and we have to make sure that we are credible. And yeah.
Hi, thanks. Just for the last few minutes before lunch, plenty of people in the room. Does anyone have any questions for the panel? The lady at the front, if you've got a microphone.
Thank you. I thought that you were going to discuss each other until the end. I thought that we are having a panel discussion and not what is a discussion show or something. I have one question to ask, that actually many of the consumers which react so hard on palm oil, they buy less. We, the Indonesian, now we are the biggest consuming country in palm oil. India and then China. So I thought there's many buyers of palm oil, but they buy little. They buy too little, but they speak too much, you see. So I think next time having this discussion, why not you have somebody, why don't you have somebody who buy a lot, who think of sustainability, who implement sustainability? I think that is most important.
Okay. Well, thanks very much. And moving on.
My name is Marcus Colchester from the Forest Peoples Programme. Thank you for this opportunity. We've heard about the consumers' concerns about workforce, smallholders, and the environment. My question is, do consumers care about the land grabbing and human rights abuses which continues to be associated with the production of palm oil, even as sadly our studies show in the operations of some of most prominent RSPO members?
Thank you, Marcus. Very good point. And similar to what I was saying before, you know, if the entry point for me is at orangutans, I'm finding that I can and others like me, other organizations, can broaden the scope of that debate. And I do quite a bit of social networking, if you're not aware, to spread the news. And I do find that the people who are very, very supportive of saving orangutans are equally aghast when we hear the stories about land grabbing. The headlines from Africa and Sarawak resound with these people. We'll have Sarawak reports posts up on a regular basis, and the outrage is there. I think that message is getting through to people that it's not just about biodiversity, and people who love orangutans don't hate people. They may trust orangutans more, but they do have concerns for human rights, for land grabs, for livelihoods, etc. So both the positive and negative aspects of this debate, I think, are being addressed with that portal, if you will, of the orangutan or deforestation in general.
Thank you. Chandran from RSPO. Let me clear this perception out there that RSPO is palm police. We are not here to police the palm oil industry. Let's understand that right from the beginning. It is a voluntary organization, so there are limitations when it is voluntary as well as a multi-stakeholder process. Now, by end of this year, we will have 10 million tons of certified sustainable palm oil. And the uptake of RSPO and ISCC, if my calculations prove right, will be about close to 55 to 60%. But there is still the 40% out there which is not taken up by the market. So my question is, why is the consumer goods manufacturers and the retailers so reluctant? I mean, Michelle mentioned the word trust. I mean, don't you have trust in the process, or don't you have trust in the RSPO standard?
I suppose, Daniel, as you represent many of the people addressed in the question, you'll be well placed.
Well, I'm not a consumer goods manufacturer, but what I know from my members is that they keep on saying, oh, the system is so complex. Where I clearly tell them and communicate like, well, we are working on this entire system or the RSPO since more than 10 years. They have been now spent more than 10 years work. And trying to push them once again to use 100% certified palm oil and palm kernel oil, which in the end all my members are doing. I think, or my impression is a little bit, that is the main problem is not the consumer goods manufacturers within the RSPO. It's rather what I observe in Germany, that there's a huge number of companies which haven't heard anything of RSPO, which are not member of RSPO, and which are using volumes of 20, 30, 40, 50,000 tons per year and sourcing at a conventional way, or sourcing conventional palm oil and not certified sustainable palm oil. And what we are trying now is, I think the only solution is to really get this tipping point in Europe, that we have 100% segregated palm oil in Europe only available, to phase out non-conventional palm oil, that all those companies which are not yet buying sustainably, that we leave them no choice. And I think this is maybe one part of the answer, but I'll leave it to the others.
With our conversations with manufacturers in Australia, when we've asked them that question, why are you not buying it? The main feedback we get is consumers don't know about it. That's why we've decided we're going to actually educate consumers about it, because somebody has to. And I think that's the issue, is people need to know about RSPO, they need to know about CSPO. And it's a lot of marketing that actually needs to be done. CSPO is good. it is actually a really good product. We know that palm oil is a high yield, but a lot of work needs to be done to actually educate the consumers and the manufacturers as well. Manufacturers will listen when consumers put pressure on them.
All right, I think it's time for lunch now. Thanks very much indeed to Agnès Pont-Devin, Daniel May, Jacqueline O'Brien, and Michel Desilets.
Thank you very much to Richard and all our wonderful panelists. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of this morning's program.